So here we are again, back by unlikely demand. And I'm not here to do a reaction. I'm here to do a follow-up to the last reaction I did, which was the Nightwish Noise video, and more particularly to the video itself. After I posted that video, I got into an awful lot of really interesting conversations about the business of the music business and the business of making movies and music videos, and the whole sort of financial ecosystem in which these bands that we love exist. And for no reason other than because it's been buzzing around in my head ever since I posted the video and ever since those conversations in the comment section got going, I felt like there's some interesting things that you might be interested in and I'm interested in talking about. And if nothing else, the theme of this channel is the hope that you're interested in the sure and certain knowledge that I am, and I'm completely self-indulgent. So I haven't worked in the music business, at least not particularly or directly. My partner and I, back in the day, did some music videos and concerts and movies with Marillion, and we did that on a participation basis. We made the movies with them. They covered only the hard costs for those movies, and then we shared in the profit with them for the movies as they sold on VHS and then on DVD. And we established a little bit of a model and a little bit of a pattern there. And it really was a crime of passion. It was something we did for the pleasure as much as for the profit, which is probably good because there wasn't really that much profit in it, but there was an awful lot of pressure. In doing those videos, I came into contact with discussions about the financing and the financial model of music. And then we took that model, and my partner and I went to a South African act via EMI, and we cut the same deal on the same basis with EMI for that South African act. And we made him a concert movie, and they sold it, and we participated in the profit in that. And they cut a deal that they had never cut anywhere else in the world with us based upon that same model. So that's the extent of my direct dealings with the music business. That being said, I'm interested in the world. I've read a lot of books. I've had a lot of conversations both within the Marillion sort of sphere and in other places, and come to understand a little bit about how the music business works. And I promise you, there is a point to this. There is a very clear point to this. There is, in fact, a call to arms and a call to action, but we'll get there circuitously because that's the nature of who I am. So let's jump back to the late 70s, early 80s, when one of my jams, as you'll know if you follow this channel, was Meatloaf. One of my favorite albums, formative for me. And at the time, Meatloaf made Bad Outta Hell, and it was, by popular acclaim, by sort of universal understanding, one of the biggest selling albums of all time. And then he made the follow-up album, Dead Ringer, and we saw him in the music video with Cher. And to my eyes, he was a celebrity and a star, and clearly a financial success. What we didn't know, and what I didn't know, and there was no internet to tell me, is between the first album and the second album, he went bankrupt. This man who, to the outside, looked like he was living exactly the life we expect our music heroes to live, selling what appeared to be a lot of albums, performing around the world. This man went bankrupt. And that's the first sort of hint we get that the promise and the lie of the music business, as is lived by, I don't know, Elton John and Kanye West, is not the experience of a lot of bands and musicians, even the ones that you and I may think and believe are super successful. And then you start to hear the stories. As part of our process of working with Marillion, I remember a conversation with Mark Kelly, the keyboard player, on the way into Wales before their first convention. And he talked about how when Marillion signed their first deal with EMI, I think that the number was 6 or perhaps 8%. They were going to receive for their first block of albums with EMI, I think it was 6 or 8% of the gross sale price of the albums that they made. And that was not an unusual deal. That was the deal the music business cut. And you can't don't hold me entirely responsible for these numbers because they are from memory. But at the time, he told me apparently that one of the biggest and most generous deals that anybody had signed with the conventional music business at that time was Michael Jackson, the biggest artist in the world at that time. And he was on something like, I think it was 14 or 16%. 14 or 16% of the wholesale price of an album that he was selling in a shop was destined for Michael Jackson's pocket. But it wasn't, because every single expense that the record label took in making that sale, and more importantly, every single expense they could justify as plausibly linked to the making of that sale, went onto the account. Every music video, every poster, every long lunch, every phone call made during the process of selling that album, all of that went onto Michael Jackson's bill. All of those expenses went onto Marillion's bill, so that once that 6, 8, 14, 16% royalty came in, before there was any possibility of that money being paid over to the artist, it first had to pay down the debt, the advance on making the album, the tour support, the money that the labels gave those acts to live and to make their albums and to buy their instruments and then to support them on tour. All of that money, which was being gifted to them by the label with one hand, was being taken back with another, so that for most artists, for most of their careers, they remain in debt to the labels that they work with. No matter how much they sell, they remain in debt to those labels. So much so that I think sometime during the course of our working with Marillion, they had renegotiated different deals. They were with different labels. They then took over their own management, and they did distribution deals around the world where they were effectively being their own label. And even then, when they did a distribution deal to sell a CD in a record shop in the Netherlands, they might get 50 pence from the sale of that CD. The CD that cost them about £1 to make the material and that they would sell online for £10, the £9 of gross profit that came out of that album sold by the band directly to a fan, that £9 got chopped up in such a way that the record company, the distributor, and the shop in which it was sold, and all the other players in that value chain, they chopped it away so that ultimately 50 pence of an album sold in a shop where that artist owned their own material was what would come back to the artist. All of which tells you that the artists, the acts, the people that you think are making fabulous amounts of money often aren't. Even when they have all of the appearances of the success of lots of money. Even when, and this is what brings us here, they're making an expensive looking music video that clearly has had money spent on it and has an artistic integrity. That's coming out of somebody's pocket, and ultimately it's coming out of the band's pocket. And that band, even if it sold millions of albums, may not ultimately have made millions of dollars. They may not have made the kind of money that we all assume that the acts that have such a massive place in our minds, that massive place they take up does not necessarily translate into a vast wealth to the artist. Famously, U2 took was it Zoo or was it Pop? They took Zoo on tour. It was featured in a book. They were on the road for 2 years with Zoo. It was the biggest touring act the world had ever seen. It was enormous. It was vast. They played to millions of people. The tour broke even only because of T-shirt sales. $50 million worth of T-shirt sales, but that was the difference between break even and profit for the biggest rock act in the world with the biggest tour in the world at that time. Because when you think about it, every time you go to a concert, apart from the back line, which the artists probably own the guitars and the keyboards and the drum sets, often because the label has advanced the money to buy them and will then take it back off them on the back end. Apart from the back line, every single piece of equipment you see is coming out of the bottom line. Every single light, every single piece of fencing at the front of the stage, every single thing in that concert hall is being paid for on a daily rate. And if it's not a daily rate, it's being paid for on a salary that somebody has to find the money to pay for. So much so that the ticket sale, the price that you pay at the door to see your favorite act play live, probably doesn't put a cent in their pockets, probably doesn't put a dime in their pockets, a penny. What it does, if they're being sensible, is it pays the freight on the tour. The tour will pay for itself on the basis of the money they take at the door. And the promoter will make money, and the venue will make money, and the venue will sell beer, and the venue will not offer the act a percentage of the beer, but often, increasingly, the promoter and the organizer of the live tour, they want a slice of the door, they want a slice of the merch. They don't offer back a slice of any of the ancillary benefits that they derive from your favorite act bringing you to a concert venue and selling you a £5 beer in a plastic cup. Where the act makes money, where the act needs you to put your hand in your pocket, is the swag, the merch stall. That's where they make their profit. That is quite literally, for a lot of acts, the reason for touring. It is the profit line for touring, as is their online sales, as is any interaction they have where directly you hand them money. Now, my son, a few of you who are constant companions in this journey know that I walk and talk with my son every day that I can. And one of the things we talk about a lot is gaming. My son is a passionate gamer. And he's also quite Catholic in his taste for games. He doesn't just play one game, to Call of Duty or whatever, to the exclusion of all others. He hops and jumps and plays lots of different games with lots of different gaming styles from lots of different gaming companies. There's also games he doesn't play because he doesn't like the gaming model's financial model, because gaming company's financial model, because he feels it's exploitive, or because he feels that they are somehow taking his money and his addiction for gaming for granted. What he does tend to do is play a lot of independent games and a lot of games by independent developers. And one of the things I admire about him is that he goes out of his way to give those people money. He doesn't just buy the game, and when he plays the game for free, he doesn't just play the game for free. He looks for ways to put money in the pockets of the people that develop games that he likes, or even the people that develop in styles he likes, or people that are doing things that he thinks will change the gaming industry in some way. He goes out of his way to spend his money to try and make sure they will continue to make the things he loves. And really, that's the preachy part, the reason for coming here. If you love a band, whoever that band is, whether it be Nightwish or Marillion or Rush or anyone, no matter how successful you think they are, we come off the back end of a weekend where Nightwish put on 2 virtual shows that the newspapers are saying were a massive success, generated the biggest number of ticket sales for this particular type of show ever. Think about this. How many months did they have to spend working up to that? How much did they have to spend technically to put that on? How many people were in that value chain for that to happen? And as much as you might have paid for your ticket, how much of that ticket price was eaten up by the tail, the logistics tail that got it to you? And unlike a conventional tour where they might go out for months and tour the album and sell a T-shirt and a cap and a bumper sticker and anything else that a bag, a jacket, whatever, a hoodie, unlike those situations where they can do that venue upon venue and upon venue, in that particular case, they just had the ticket sales. There's no ancillary benefits. There's no additional income. And it might well be that for all of the success of that show, they ran at a loss. Just like I'm almost certain that there is absolutely no way that music video for Noise was justified from a financial point of view. The only justification was an artistic one, was a creative one. It was art as expression. Even when it was part of marketing campaign, it was an expression of art by people whose art you love. And if you do love them, whoever they are, buy a t-shirt. Buy two. If you go to 2 gigs, buy a t-shirt on the first night for yourself, and on the second night, buy one for somebody else, and buy a cap and buy a hoodie. At whatever level you can afford to pay for the continuation of the thing that you love, do so. Do not assume that just because Elton John can appear as the personal shopper on Steve Wilson's album, because he is literally known throughout the world for spending this vast wealth he has accrued. For every Elton John, there are dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of music acts that create the music that you love, whose income is at best okay. It might afford them, as somebody said to me once, it might give them the same kind of living as a middle class doctor in a small town being paid by the NHS. It doesn't pay for them to lead a rock and roll lifestyle. They don't. They grind. They grind, and yet they create for you the things that you love. So if you can afford it, support it. Buy from the band. Buy the swag. Buy directly from the website. Find ways to spend your money as an investment in the future continuance of the art that you love. And now, particularly after COVID, that's got to apply 1,000,000%. My good friend Ian Bond, who we mocked mercilessly on the Marillion tour for his unforgivably heavy sub bass during that tour, he does front of house for Steven Wilson, and he does an amazing job. And the last time I spoke to him sometime, or at least tagged him online sometime around March, he'd spent a year where he hadn't been out working, hadn't had any work to do. The bands that we love support an ecosystem of people, all of whom are struggling, have struggled, and will continue to struggle. And Meatloaf was bankrupt after selling the biggest album, one of the biggest albums in history. And 140 million views of a Nightwish YouTube video doesn't mean Nightwish have made $140 million and can afford to buy and sell the most expensive things in Finland. Support the things you love. Support the art that you love. Buy a t-shirt. Buy from the band. Put your money where your mouth is, and make sure that they keep doing the thing you love. And that's me being preachy, and that's me being on a soapbox and doing a completely unusual and unexpected thing that nobody asked for and probably nobody needs. But I felt like it needed to be said. And I think that the financial model of the music business is an incredible one. I think it's incredibly hard to be a working musician. And when I think of the importance that music has had in my life, I think the musicians that I love, I would like to think that they live an incredibly comfortable life because they've made my life better. That's it. Buy a t-shirt, buy 2. If you go to 3 concerts, buy 3. Buy one for a friend, buy one for your granny. Support the things you love. Put your hand in your pocket. That's it. Thanks for watching. Keep the faith. Normal service will be resumed.